Welcome to ILV Majlis, where Milan meets the Khaleeji and the art of travel begins. Today I'm very pleased to introduce you to Arafa Al Hammadi, which is our guest. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks for coming. Let's dive straight into the first point.
Yes.
The travel industry in this specific time is in an uncomfortable position. Beautiful hotels, fantastic food, amazing location, polished service, but there is something missing. The empathy, the human connection. Why is that so?
I believe throughout the years, people been traveling a lot and they have built so much that they forgot the touch of the emotions, like you mentioned. I think it's now people focus more about the looks instead of how this actually gonna make a person would feel. And some of the people actually feel the emptiness or the coldness in places instead of the kind of emotion that this place would give. And some of them are already an empath. They could sense a place, they could sense the energy about it. And some of them, they just move on forward and that's it. But if you're gonna talk about the industry actually shifting to something else, is the fact that, again, they care about how this thing would look instead of actually how the thing would actually make people feel about it.
But do you think the people are no longer the center of the interest? I feel that we lost track and sight of what hospitality is.
This is actually a good question to ask. People are still the center. But again, who is navigating, who's behind it, this is what makes a difference. Because after all, wherever we go, there's always somebody who's able to put that magic touch, that emotions, that everything. And again, if you go to another place, you will find that person who actually lose that touch, lose that emotions, doesn't give you whatever that you want or seek in a certain place. But people are still the center of the attention itself.
I was very privileged in my youth to born and raised up in Milan, which back then, 20 years ago, maybe more, I won't tell you how many years ago, I had the privilege of meeting those incredible craftsmen and content creators that later became these incredible powerhouses that turned Milan in what it is today, the capital of design, first of all, then fashion, and then anything that is stylish. Therefore, this sense of beauty, this sense of harmony was very well enrooted in me. What I see that today, this is lost because what before we were going to achieve in creating something unique, it became mass market, even within the luxury travel industry.
That's a very interesting point. Well, I never took it from this perspective. To me, is that if you're gonna look at it in this way, that's mean there is a lot of things are missing. There is a lot of human touch is missing. If we're gonna talk about crafts, then when it comes to human doing it, and instead now we have machines doing the work of a man instead of actually the man itself doing it, then this is a whole different story. Then the narrative will shift. That's mean the energy, the love, the passion, the compassion, the empathy, it's gone. But to me, I still believe there is somewhere in this world, there is always a human touch.
Let's backtrack for a second. What is your trade, your specialty? Who's the woman behind all of this? Because I should have asked before, but I dived into a question, whereas I think it's very important for our audience to understand the remarkable woman you are and what you have achieved in your life.
So I dedicated myself for years to study human behavior and as well as performance strategy. The reason why, it's because when you think about human and behavior, it comes actually with three interconnected things. We got identity, the power, and the behavior itself. Like, what's the root cause of it? And then the identity behind it, because sometimes when we act on a certain emotions, there is an identity about it. Maybe the lack of self-confidence identity, for example, or the confidence identity is taking control, and there is the power, what it created, you know? So from these three perspectives, this is how it started. And it's funny because I never knew this is actually my field. I always thought it's only personal and professional development specialist and that's it. No. It took me a while actually to find myself, like where I truly belong. I studied different subjects, two majors in universities, actually four, so to speak, public law, bachelor degree, and then master degree in criminology, master degree in sports law, and bachelor in Sharia law. But the thing is that, which is so funny, I don't focus about the Sharia law and the sports law. To me, they are not important as much as what shaped me the most is the criminology and the public law, because it gave me passion. It gave me a way of looking on how things work, you know? And studying abroad is not even like studying here in Doha. Because to me, I got to look into different laws, different states, different, you know, way of governing government do things and so on. And when you come here, you have one law, one, you know, amendment, so to speak, and just a certain way that everything just goes with one flow. Unlike there is always chaos, but here there's order. There is always order. So, but criminology is just the fact that the art, I call it art, the art of studying a person's behavior of why they did what they did. Because in my specialty as a forensic profiler, I study criminals, why they did that, what made them do that, what made them do that, and what on earth, so to speak, make a person go to do what the thing that they did. And sometimes we have to actually create a certain profile if, let's say, the criminal is unknown, so we need to use our imagination through the, you know, the evidence that we find or whatever, the details that we get and collect and data. This is how we create it. So it was a quiet journey.
And how do you develop trust in people? Coming from your criminology background, analyzing people, how do you trust
That's
a
a
fellow
good-
human being? And how long does it take you to trust a fellow human
That's
being?
a good question. Trusting is not something easy, not for everybody. But to me personally, I think it's the small, consistent things that they do for you. And they are quiet, not loud, because it's not even performative. A lot of people will just want to gain trust by using performance, like, oh my God, look at me, I'm doing this for you, I'm doing that for you. But if you want to gain someone's trust, then you need to be consistent on showing that kind of care, that kind of thing. And it should be silent, it shouldn't be actually loud. It should be quiet, consistent, and there you will get to see that small, tiny pieces coming all together. This is how you find your trust in a person, a place, so to speak.
That's very interesting. I was educated in Switzerland and I absorbed a lot from the culture at a young age. And I always thought that trust was the pillar of our society, more or less like the banking system, which it is actually based on transactions usually. But in Switzerland, it's very different, is retained on trust. And this is the trust that, going back to tourism, is what we are trying to achieve with our travelers. Because obtaining the trust in a society where people analyze you, collects data about your behavior, how you move, how you dress, how you talk, what is your history, is what is making us to become these treasurers of the people's trust.
Yes.
But trust is very important. But in this society, something that is even more important is Diyafa. Now, coming from a Western world, Diyafa to me was at first quite an unknown concept. What is Diyafa for a Khaleeji?
That's a good question. So if you look at it from a behavioral perspective, you get to see that you are welcomed. I will ask you this question. What do you feel when you enter a certain place, like here in Doha, and you are welcomed? What's the emotion that you feel?
Whenever I'm in Doha, I feel very welcomed. Everybody's so kind. From the taxi driver to the people the strangers you meet at the restaurant or at the supermarket or even in the streets. People are very, very kind.
So that's your answer. But the thing is that also, if you look at it again from a behavioral perspective, Diyafa is actually something personal. It's coming from the heart. It's coming from within. You know, in Khaleej, if you go to all GCC, whether you went to Kuwait, Saudi, Oman, Bahrain, and so on, even here is something personal, because other than just its Islamic thing, it's actually personal because people love to be protected. They love that kind of emotion of belonging to an environment where they feel that their discretion is protected, everything about them is welcomed, everything about them is well prepared. Small gestures that they would not usually talk about, but then find the other person is doing it for them all of a sudden before they even speak it, but they sense it. So this is what Diyafa in Khaleej means. It's more into belonging, the kind of personality traits that someone would want within them, they find it here.
Diyafa, trust, confidence. It's a recurrence of emotions which all lead to create an environment which is very stable.
Yes.
An environment where there is no rush, where people trust one another because it feels like there is no hidden agenda.
No, it's all about calmness. It's all about, you know, that kind of, if we're gonna imagine it like the wave of the sea, like the current of the sea, it's very gentle, very soft, very soothing when you hear it, and your body's just relaxing. This is how it is.
And do you ever feel that you go to a beautiful place and you feel somehow that it's empty and cold?
Yes, so many places actually. And it's funny because if you notice that Khaleeji travelers, they always sense the emotions everywhere. And they compare, like we love to compare places wherever we go. And often that the emptiness, if there is something emotionally missing, we notice it immediately. Because here, it's all about love. It's all about the kind of giving that we're used to it, you know, and emotions, that is, ya hala, ya marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan, the way we, you know, say hello to other people and even to our family and friends, it's different. But when you go to a place and then you find that kind of coldness, that's the first, you know, the first thing that we notice. There's no emotion. The place is empty, like everything about it artistically nice, you know, the design is nice, everything is nice, but then there's no emotions. Like the person itself, this is something I learned a long time ago when I was studying about mythology and also theology, so to speak. There's a Greek word called Meraki. So Meraki means when you do something, you put yourself into it. To the point, let's say, for example, this camel over here, you made it, and you put yourself into it. You made it with love. What's done in love is done well. So I would come to a certain place and I see your art and I'll be like, oh, this is exactly how he does his work. And then I would call you, hello, I saw this, place and it has this kind of art and it seems exactly like you. And you'd be like, yes, this is me. You see, sometimes people, if they didn't put anything in their work, it feels empty. This is the same thing with places. I would see the art, everything, and even people, but there is no emotions because they didn't put the effort. They didn't care. They only care about the aesthetics about it, but they didn't put the effort of how emotionally people will feel about it.
This is something I noticed when I started working here with Khaleeji travelers. And the connection between us and the Khaleeji travelers is that we both understand this sense of truthness, of depthness in doing anything, which is very much like when I traveled to Japan. The Japanese have this very same sense of truth to the intention that they're making. And I see a huge similarity. And the more I travel, the more I come across that in many cultures, also in my Milanese way of being, the sense of truthness talks to the people in a very subtle way. My next question is, what do you think the Khaleeji traveler needs as an aid from my side as a travel professional to make his travel experience complete?
That's a tough question. I cannot fully answer it. But I'm going to give like an assumption, if I may. There is nothing complete entirely, but who you are, who you present yourself, right? What you give to other people, this is what makes a difference. A place can be empty, it doesn't have that kind of emotional depth and, the kind of intelligence as well. But one person could enlighten the whole room because of that person, because of the way he perceived things, the way he put into the small things that people see. So for us, usually, like, you will never find someone who can have a perfect experience, but to us is related to the people.
And what makes me more a sole service provider to the Khaleeji audience? I see it, I'm successful most of the times, but still I'm always pretending to do more. Me and my team are always trying to understand more and more this fascinating culture. And sometimes I feel that we're not doing enough. And by not doing enough, it makes me questioning if can I counsel, how much can I counsel, how much can I steer one's ideas, and how much I cannot. Because you see, I'm here to learn, I'm here to grasp. And these small nuances of the Khaleeji culture are what I need to master. Please enlighten me.
Wow. What you need to master is to go more, get to know us more, get involved in our culture. This is how you will understand the nature, because we have an Arabic saying, من عاشر قوم 40 يوما أصبح مثلهم. Whoever actually stay with certain people for 40 days, he or she becomes like them. This is exactly how it happens. You need 21 days to actually build a certain habit, for example, right? And you have been going back and forth between Doha, so by now I am confident that you built enough base when it comes to data on how we love things, how we love to travel, how we like to see the views, and how our services look like, and what so on. But again, if you want more, then learn from the origins, from the original people themselves. This is how you get your information. This is how you collect your data. This is how more you will perceive things differently, and you will understand it even more.
Inshallah, I'll be able to do that.
Inshallah.
Do you think people respect honesty more than someone who's willing to say no to them? Because I noticed that when I try to say no while advising, I'm entering in uncharted waters.
Interesting. So there's a story that I mentioned earlier to you, is about the yes man.
Yes.
It is it is a movie called Yes. I think it's Yes Man or Yes. So I think the actor Jim Carrey, so to speak. So he used to say no the whole entire time. No, 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 most of the time. And then suddenly he met this writer. He's a book writer, and he published about the yes word magically. So he met him, and then he said, just say yes and everything will happen. All right, I'm just giving you a quick brief regarding the movie. So when he starts saying yes, his life became better. Everything started working out. But also when he starts saying yes, troubles follows. He got arrested by the police, and then because he was traveling too much, like, why are you traveling too much? You know, like, what is your reason? Questioning and so on. So then he lost like his cool, and then he started questioning why. But the lesson of the yes and no is the fact that you need to balance between. If the yes is always forced, then people could sense it. If the no is sincere by showing boundaries, then it's also can be sensed, you know? Sometimes people draft away because they might think that you are a yes guy, and the other might, you know, think that you are a no guy. But it depends how it's coming into the conversation. How are we balancing between the yes and no?
Talking about boundaries, why do you think privacy here in the Khaleej world matters so much emotionally, especially for people who are used to be surrounded by attention?
Okay. Look at it from my perspective. Discretion is elegance. It shouldn't be loud. Like how they say, old money. Old money is always quiet. Old money is never about showing off. It's all about keeping that calmness and the protecting your own peace. You're safeguarding that's something precious to you. You don't want to share it with the world. Why would I share something with the world and then I'd be chaotic about it? Because once you share it, everything it doesn't seem like the way it is, you know? Because we attract sometimes what we want and what we don't want. Not in the way of just the kind of universal way how people talk about it, but no. But the way that, for example, ain, for example, bad eye, because we believe in bad eye and we believe in envy and hasad. Exactly. Exactly. So why do you take it louder when you can just protect it and it shouldn't be out there? What's the point actually of sharing? What's the point of showing off? Is that gonna make me feel better? No, I think it's just, for other people, it's just the kind of insecurity. But to other people, on the other hand, discretion is all about protecting, safeguarding, to know that there is a place where you belong to. A part of you that people don't see is hidden, so is safeguarded, where you can breathe, you can exhale, you know, that kind of moment when there is so much noise in this world, but then there is a place where you feel like relaxed, protect.
I totally relate to that. We at ILV keep safeguarding one's privacy as almost the beacon of our essence in giving service.
Yes.
Because if I take this responsibility in safeguarding your privacy, I think the trust that is a recurring thing in my job
Yes,
grows continuously.
that's true.
My next question to you is about privacy.
Hmm.
What happens to a relationship when someone feels their privacy has been mishandled?
I'm quiet because been there.
We all been there,
Yes,
unfortunately.
it's difficult. You know, it's very interesting because I was talking about this with my sister early this morning, and I was telling her once a trust is broken, you cannot fix it back. So what happened when all that the huge emotional turmoil, you know, the overwhelming emotion of you cannot trust anybody again. That's the first thing.
But what about forgiveness?
Hold on, I'm coming to it.
Okay.
So you cannot trust anybody again. But then again, you have to go through all the, the 5 stage of grief. You have to go through it. And the last one is acceptance. If you're going to forgive, forgive because you want to forgive so you can move on. You're not going to forgive because of them. No. Maybe they will never learn their lesson. You will never get your closure of I'm sorry to you. But forgive for you so you can move on. But again, once a trust is lost, there is always going to be a place of pain, but you will remember and you will never forget, but you move on. You build your life. New trust will will reshape later on. It doesn't matter how and who, because we trust people every single day. For example, the Uber driver. You don't know him, right? But you trust that he's going to pick you from this place and drop you to this place. So that's the simplest trust, but it's already there. So you never see the lines, but they are there. So don't worry about it. It will be rebuilt, like we say.
Do you think the Khaleeji is a society that it's easy to allow forgiveness?
That depends on the person itself. Because it's all about internal feelings, internal, how we can say it. I call it the internal compass of moral of the person, So the society is, as in Arab, so to speak. If you go to any Arab country, the first thing you'll hear, Ya ammi sameh, forgive. Forgive. Allah is great. Allah will give you whatever you want. Just forget and forgive. If you did not, then the only person is going to be hurt is you. No one else. It's only you. But it's a famous phrase. Allah ysamhak. May Allah forgive you. May God forgive you, and just move on. So the society is actually, very forgiving. But again, it's also depends on one's person if they want to move on or they don't want to move on.
So my last question to you is...
Yes.
When you look at luxury today, what do you feel people misunderstand the most?
Luxury. So for me, luxury is, let's say you and I seated here. It's luxury.
This view is luxury.
Luxury. Being calm, being present is luxury. Because luxury has different meanings to different people. And I have been saying this nonstop for the past, 6 months. I have been doing spinning classes. And before, I used to really feel tired and exhausted, and I didn't want to do it. But now I always tell my friends, it's luxury for me because I go there and I drop everything negative outside, and then I go inside the class and I do it, and I'm feeling like fun. That's so luxurious because if we're going to look at it from a different perspective, not a lot of people have this ability. Not a lot of people actually have the time to go to the gym, the luxury to go to the gym, the luxury to even sit down and drink water, the luxury to walk, the luxury actually to be present in the moment. They don't have it. So luxury doesn't have to be necessarily about a thing. It could be anything.
I always say that our travelers entrust us with the most important thing they have in their lives, and is their time,
Luxury.
their private time.
Yes.
The luxury to be able to do what you would like to do.
Yes.
And me being entrusted in creating the most perfect luxury for that human being is the biggest responsibility that one can think of, but also it gives me joy.
It is.
It gives me joy because seeing someone that is rushed into his or her daily life continuously, and then it comes to me and to my team, and we create the perfect itinerary, and when this person comes back saying, I feel refreshed, thank you. That's, to me, it's the most beautiful reward
Yes.
that there is.
Yes.
Arafa,
Oui.
what made you choose to study criminology?
It came from passion. Plus, I have a very strong mother. My mom was also passionate about it, and a part of her previous jobs actually was related to that section. And I grew up watching her analyzing, doing this, doing that, and the way she is like so, profiling people is so good to me that I grew up in this environment and I didn't know, and you just grow up with it. You become somebody who can focus on people's emotion, you read their faces, you read the atmosphere around you, you read the room, the energy inside the room and everything. And then I'm not gonna lie to you, after I finished my bachelor degree, I was like, you know what, I'm bored and I want to learn something. So, and then I was searching online on, universities. And then I came across Canada and there was like, University of British Columbia. I was like, let's go.
Beautiful place, by the way.
It is?
Vancouver is to die for.
My heart.
It's the only city in the world where nature melts with urbanization.
That's true.
In a harmonic combination that makes the place magic.
It is, it is. So I fell in love. And my story began over there. And it was just, interesting that when somebody is passionate about something, they are so good at it. No way you cannot even imagine it. So I ended up doing it.
How do you think profiling affects an individual taste in luxury and their choices of where they spend their money?
That's a very deep question. Repeat it again.
Okay. How do you think profiling a person's behavior affects the individual's taste in luxury and their choices on how and where they spend their money for their leisure time?
It's the identity. Who you think you are is what makes you choose what you choose. It what makes you go to these places, because a person, you can profile anybody, by the way, right? And and if we're going to take it from a perspective of Carl Jung, there is the persona and the shadow. The shadow is the secret society of yourselves. So the kind of secret personality that you never want to show to other people. And the persona is the one in the front. The one is shown to other people, the people that and people who read people, profiling them. Some of them are really accurate if you go deeper. We have what we call it in Arabic, al-firasa, which is the studying the face features, your eyebrow shape, your nose, your jaw, your mouth and everything. And you could accurately, because of that, profile somebody and you can tell exactly based on that. But then again, it's identity, behavior, and the pattern. There is always a pattern. That pattern, if it is repetitive, we got it. You know what this person gonna choose. You know immediately what they're gonna do.
Arafa, where did you study?
So I studied in the United States, Washington University in St. Louis, a bachelor degree in public law, and I studied criminology, master degree in University of British Columbia. So
beautiful place. We already discussed about Vancouver and how beautiful it is. Do you ever go back?
I do from time to time when I feel like I missed that kind of winter, you know, because I love winter. I'm not a summer girl, honestly, not my favorite, but it's always a place you want to go back because I share memories, families there as well, so it's always good to be back.
And how did you go from public law to criminology?
So there is actually a behind story. So my mom used to have a background like that, and she always talked about it. The way she spoke about it is so passionate, so it's always piqued my interest. And I wanted to do it for a very long time, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And the other part is that I was bored, so I needed something to cover my boredom. And I love to learn, basically. So as long as I have a free time to learn, then I will go and do it. I wouldn't mind how many years it will take me, as long as I'm learning something new and beneficial. And the third reason is that I love any CIA, FBI, CSI Miami, what do you call it, Criminal Minds, any series that
Cold
relate-
cases.
I love them. Law and Order,
Oh.
Suits.
Oh, those ones.
Yeah, exactly. So everything about it is fascinating. How they're solving it, and how to profile a criminal and so on. It's just what attracted me even more, what fascinated me even more.
And how did you jump from public law, criminology, sports law?
Oh, okay. That was during the Corona. So also I needed something to do.
Humanity needed something to do.
It's related to my name, and my name means knowledge. So knowledge is the mountain of knowledge, so to speak, because it's the mountain of Arafa in Saudi Arabia. So I always have that tendency of wanting to learn something new. So I always like, I want more, I want more, I want more. I'm hungry to learn, I'm hungry to learn. And the only thing that is, I find it devastating sometimes is that there is no time enough in this world will ever make me learn everything at all. Because no matter what you learn, you will never get enough. So it was during the Corona period, and it was the first one during 2020 COVID, basically. And I didn't know what to do. I decided to study. So I'll just do. At least I would have a lot of time of studying instead of paying attention to something else. So, yeah. So, Iko, I just told you about what I do and what I studied. So I want to hear about your company. There's something mysterious and luxury about it. I want to know more.
Okay, do we have a couple of days?
Yes.
So basically, I was not given a choice.
Interesting.
Yes. I was sent to boarding school in Switzerland. Then I went on a year abroad to Australia. But I honestly wanted to go to South Africa, but my parents said, no, it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
So in order to punish them, I chose the furthest place away on earth, only because at 15 I didn't know New Zealand existed.
Oh.
Otherwise I would have gone to New Zealand. But and back then there was no internet, no nothing. Then I finished my education in Italy, in an English school. I went to London, and in London I pursued politics, development, gender studies, filmography. I was into cinema.
Wow.
And then I applied for a PhD in antique studies because I wanted to study Byzantine history.
Wow.
And my mother came to me and said, how can you do that to me?
Yes, how can you do that to her?
Imagine an Italian mother, playing the part, saying, after all the sacrifices that we did for you, and now you don't want to come back and work with us? So I went back to Italy, and I entered the family business. My mother started the business out of her parents' will. Because when she graduated in economics, my grandfather wanted her to be a banker. He was a very forward-thinking man back in the 60s. We're talking 1960s. And he wanted her younger daughter, to be the director of a bank. And then my mother instead said, you know what, I want to travel the world and be a travel agent. So my grandfather had a bit of a heart attack.
Wow.
But then he said, okay, if this is what you want to do, why not?
Yeah.
And I just came back And everything seemed so natural. Well, first of all, they put me in the corporate section where I tried to commit suicide a couple of times because it was so boring.
So it didn't work out for you.
No, totally. Talking with very important accounts, talking about, oh, can you book me a Milan to London, a Milan to New York, a Milan to Tokyo flight, without, adding anything. And I was always say, but would you like to do something else, like, try an experience? No, it's just a business trip. It wasn't fun. So it was very arid for me back then. So I decided to move to the other section of the company, which they were doing FIT, independent travelers, leisure trips. And I came, and my mother's always been very much a connoisseur of the Middle East and North Africa. So, when I was a child, she would take me to Syria on holiday to see ruins, or to Leptismania in Libya to see ruins again. So I grew kind of tired of ruins, and I wanted to go and explore Africa, Black Africa.
Why Africa specifically?
Okay, I'll tell you a story. I was home with the chicken pox, and I must have been 13 or 14. And at lunchtime, I turned on the telly, and there was this man that was talking, which of course I didn't listen to what he was saying. And I was captured, mesmerized by this incredible backdrop. It was a fabulous mountain and an incredible blue sky. It was November in Milan, so the weather was a dump, as it used to be. Now it's improved a bit. Anyhow, so I looked down at the sub-caption, and it says Cape Town, and then above that you said Nelson Mandela, which I couldn't care less about who this Nelson Mandela chap was. I was just interested about Cape Town. And back then there was no internet, there was nothing. So I go to the encyclopedia and I look at Cape Town, and I started reading the story about this city that was colonized by the Dutch, and it was the center of the world for blah, 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 blah. So my mother comes home for lunch and says, oh, you're so bored, but don't worry, for the festive season, we will go to Brazil where we have relatives. And I said, no, I don't want to go to Brazil. I want to go to South Africa. My mother looks at me. Why? Because there is a beautiful sky.
There is a beautiful
mountain. So my
mother
tries to explain to me that there was a problem with racial segregation, and Nelson Mandela was a man fighting for the rights of the people.
Political issues.
Political. And my mother said, perhaps it's not the best time to go, she advises. I said, okay, fine, we should go now. So I've been so stubborn that eventually my family and we go to South Africa.
How was it?
The moment the airport, the plane opened its door, and I inhaled the African air, I said to my mother, I'm home.
Interesting.
She looked at me and said, don't be silly, just get down the stairs.
But this is what inspired you actually even to travel the world and to see more.
Yes, but Africa resonated to me so much.
It's called motherland.
It just got under my skin so much. And then a true nightmare started for my parents. I wrote on the kitchen's wall, let's go and live in South Africa, in all the languages I could master. My mother, of course, wanted to kill me. My father said, okay, he's gone completely nuts. This is not a normal person. And for years, I laid and read anything about history, Nelson Mandela. I became politicized about apartheid,
Yeah.
I was, all of a sudden,
You're
I was
passionate.
Yes, and I was advocating for people's rights. My peer were looking at me and said, what are you talking about? Because, those things were quite unknown back then because, it was different. And then I started this wish to go to Africa, and I went to Africa. I loved Africa until I came across Japan. And Japan was another love affair in my life. But whereas Africa was very much under my skin, with Japan was a mystical, spiritual love affair.
If you were to describe the countries that you visit, mind, body, and soul, how do you organize them? 3 only.
Mind, body, and soul.
3 countries.
Body, Africa, for sure. South Africa, even though I have a love affair with Mozambique. Soul is Japan, for sure. And mind is here. A year and a half ago, I've been to Qatar quite a few times. At business, invited by the tourism board, the showcasing all the time a new hotel, the World Cup, this and that. Last year I was invited to do a digital detox in the north part of the country. And after doing this digital detox, which by the way is very useful, a little voice told me, don't go back. Go to Doha, spend some days in Doha. I went to Doha, and for 4 days I just traveled the city. I got to see the people. I went back to the office in Milan and I said, we're going to open an office in Doha because Doha is the place to be.
Yes.
And everybody said, but no, it's Dubai. Forget Dubai. No offense to Dubai, yeah? No offense to Dubai. But Doha is what resonates to me. Doha is so much like Milano. It's classy, understated, proud, but at the same time very humble.
Yes.
People are very honest, very kind. Doha, I feel so much at home. I love the landscape, even the heat. Whereas in Milano it drives me crazy, here I don't mind it because I just love the pace of life.
We are happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words.
And on this note, I would like to thank Arafa for her time to be with us.
Thank you for having me.
And see you the next time.